Welcome back to Creative Thinkers. My name is Miguel Valenzuela, and I want to welcome you guys to our show. Today we have somebody very interesting. His name is Daniel Cano, and he is the founder of Heroes Haven. He actually created this a very interesting way, and he's going to tell us all about it. Danny, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me here. It's a pleasure to be here.
No, the pleasure is ours because we always like to hear people's stories. And your story is very interesting because you actually took a whole bunch of different avenues through your journey, I think, in order to get to where you're at today. So one of the first questions that I always ask all of our guests is, where did this all come from? How did it all start? Tell us a little bit about what you were like when you were a child.
Well, I grew up here in El Paso primarily. There was like a year and a half, 2 year when I was going out of the first grade and summer and into the second grade, where we moved from El Paso to Athens, Alabama.
For 1 year?
For a year and a half. My parents had, my father was living there at the time. They were separated, and they decided to get back together and give it a try. Ultimately, it didn't work out.
Right.
But we basically all packed up and went to stay where he was living, and we had other family members that had moved out there as well.
Oh, okay.
And so
totally different experience, I'd assume.
It was, at that age, I would, for me, trying to understand who you are, a lot of times has to do with you understanding who other people are.
Right.
And so you kind of start to build, okay, this is where I fit into the puzzle, right? Mm-hmm. And so moving from here to Alabama was, I mean, we might as well have moved to another planet because it was different. So much so, but it was amazing. I mean, here, our neighbors are right up against us.
Right.
You share a wall with your neighbor's house, if you will. We're living in apartments. There, it's like your closest neighbor might be like half a mile down the road or something.
Oh, wow.
Or at least far enough away, at least it seems that way. And so now I'm trying to get a feel for how we fit into this structure without really knowing that there is a structure. One of the things that I can remember very, very distinctly is going to school and having my teacher look. I've at the time 2 other brothers and my sister would come along that during that time that we were there, but having a teacher look at me and go, with whatever accent that is, right? What are you?
Not really understanding who you are as a person.
Well, like
culturally speaking, I would assume.
Another way of looking at it, and forgive me for not being able to explain this exactly, but I can remember going to the playground and there were 2 water fountains out there. One that was primarily for black people, and the other one was for whites. Wow. Now, it wasn't segregated that way anymore. I think you could drink from either one. I can remember standing there.
Like an unspoken rule at that point.
Well, in the past, it was a hard rule. There was separation. And standing there going, well, which one do I drink out of? I don't really know. And then to have the teacher ask me the question, like, what are you? I think she was trying to ask me like what my cultural background was, or because
which was something that you had never encountered before. Am I correct?
Not really.
Right. Our community doesn't lend itself to that.
Well, we're Hispanics of Mexican descent. Both on my mom's side and my dad's side, and so. On one side, it feels more Native American. On the other side, it feels more European, somewhat. And so there's a kind of a mix there. And so there was like a little bit of a difference in here in El Paso. But when I got there, it was like, where did these kids come from? They look so different from the rest of them. And then to ask, and again, I don't think she had any kind of like malice involved or anything like that, but just like, I need to put you in a box, but I don't know which box to put you in.
But you know what's interesting about that whole story is the fact that we grow from these stories, right? These are the things that mold us into the individuals that we are today. And I find it interesting because you've actually accomplished a lot of things in your life. You've actually had many facets to your life. And that's kind of the journey that I want you to take us through. So you're a child, you moved back to El Paso, I suppose, or assume that you got an education of some sort. How did that work out into what you are now doing today?
Well, sure enough, we moved back. to El Paso, and I have this thing about me where I pick up on people's mannerisms.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we came back, I had a really thick Southern accent.
No way.
Yeah.
In a
so
year and a half, you
like
picked it up.
this, and I'm not sure what it was or if it was inappropriate. But,
Right.
using words like pasture and yonder, and
Interesting.
and of course there was a yes, ma'am, and no, sir, hard.
Uh-huh.
And so we come back, and it's almost like the reverse happened coming back, because now I've got teachers looking at me in elementary and going, "Where are you from?"
Because of your accent now?
Yeah, and now it's like, my uncles would pick us up and take us to certain places just so other people could listen to us talk.
No way.
These poor kids.
He was showing you
something
off?
going on with them, or something like that. It's just like it was an oddity. I don't
Right.
know. So, but kind of going to what you were saying before, and looking back, because I never really thought of it this way, is that understanding that there is a structure, or what makes people feel comfortable
Mm-hmm.
is being in a certain structure, right? And putting
Mm-hmm.
people into a certain structure.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to get upset with it much, when I was younger. It's like, why are you trying to put me in a box? Why are you trying
Right.
to define me that way?
Right.
But today I just say, well, that's how people relate to you, because they want to understand what it is.
Right.
And so as I, was going through high school, and I always wanted to serve my country. That's really important to me.
Mm-hmm.
So regardless of where I end up, I know that I want a part of my history to be that I serve my country.
Okay.
When we moved back to El Paso, we moved into the projects. And that in itself is the experience, because there's a subculture involved there.
Right.
And many different areas and so forth, and I'm trying really, really hard to fit in, but I am and I'm not.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was one of those things where I have great friends,
Right.
and I've always had amazing experiences. People ask me, well, talk us about how hard it was for you growing up in the
Mm-hmm.
projects. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
I think it was probably hard, but I'll tell you right now, I don't really remember the real difficulties, if you will. I remember the fellowship, the companionship, the having a community,
Mm-hmm.
right? But knowing that there was something else outside of that.
Right. And is that what led you into the military?
Yes.
And was the camaraderie that you experienced in growing up something that you kind of required when you went into the military?
I didn't think of it that way.
Okay.
Interesting you mentioned that. I've never really thought of it that way, but it could be that. I do remember saying to myself, I'm really enjoying my time, because I loved having a great time.
Right.
But I'm like, I need some separation from my friends. I need some separation from El Paso, because there's certain things in me that I want to accomplish,
Mm-hmm.
and I may not be able to accomplish those things because I'm just enjoying myself too much,
Mm-hmm.
if you will. And again, through what other people might think are hardships, but I just thought they were great adventures.
Which is a beautiful way to look at it, because I think sometimes there are individuals, unfortunately, that get stuck in these hardships, right?
Well,
And that's kind of one of the things that we're going to talk about what you do with what you're currently doing right now.
The blessings, so many of them, but one of them was I had a assistant librarian at the middle school that I went to. She kind of took me under her wing.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And introduced me to her family, and I'd actually go on vacation with them. And
Wow.
so they
Okay.
took me out of what I
That
would
place.
think that it was just a norm, and showed me all these other things. And she would sit down and talk to me. She championed me.
Beautiful.
And she explained to me that there was so much more, and that there was so much more to me. But I didn't see that.
Right.
Because I'm too busy trying to figure out how to stay in a box.
Right.
And so she shared so much with me, and just showed me that, look, if you can get out there, you're going to see like a whole different side of things. And she was excited for me. And so.
And that then kind of put that little idea in your head.
Yeah.
I can probably go somewhere and do these things, right?
Well, I didn't even know what it was.
Right.
But I knew that there was something around the corner, right? And I didn't start to think about how I become of value to somebody else till much later. But by being able to relate to individuals that are outside of those boxes that I kind of had been put in, and I kind of put myself into, that I could be of some form of value to their life. And so I joined the military to travel and to kind of have those experiences.
Right.
And I ended up my first assignment, actual written out assignment, if you will. They would call them rips because they used to rip the paper off the
or
the
they
machine.
write it out and then rip it out?
Well, no, it would come out teletype, right? And then they rip it off. So it's called a rip because you rip it off. Dating myself pretty good here. So
it didn't come across the phone, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well,
point.
I didn't get a text, right? Right. So was to Kansas, right? So here I am, a kid joined the military. I want to experience life, and I'm going to Kansas. Well, the sergeant goes, because I didn't really want to go to Kansas. I wanted to go East Coast, West Coast, overseas.
Right.
But the sergeant was like, well, you kind of messed up your requests. It's called a dream sheet. You dream about where you want to go.
Right.
And when it was first explained to me, they said, I'm like, well, where are the assignments? I don't know what the assignments are. And he says, well, you see all those binders up there? Those are all the assignments all over the world.
Oh,
but he didn't explain to me that it had to be specific to my career field. I was an air traffic controller at the time, or trained to be air traffic controller.
Okay.
So I started picking places like Fiji. I just like, well, that's a great place. East Coast, West Coast, overseas. They're like, there's not even a runway there. How are you going to be an air traffic controller? I said, oh, well, that's the part where I'm just, not the brightest guy. So they ended up sending citing me to Kansas. But interestingly enough, I was going through air traffic control school with some folks from Denmark, some civilians.
Okay.
Because the military trained civilians from other countries to do different types of jobs.
I didn't even know that. That's great.
So they weren't in the military. They were just training to become air traffic controllers in Denmark. And the one of the students, we kind of befriended each other, whatever it might be. And she was asking me, she's like, where are you going? Everybody got their assignments. Where are you going? I go, well, I'm going to Kansas. She says, Kansas? Why Kansas? I go, I don't know, but you know what? It'll be great.
Right.
One way or the other, it'll be great. And so she dropped a seed in my mind, or a recommendation, and this has happened to me so many different times in my life, where somebody says one little thing to you, and it changes the course of your life.
And you remember that.
Absolutely.
So
what she says, don't you speak Spanish? I go, yeah, I speak some Spanish. Mostly it's just understanding. It's just, I don't know, but I think that there's a Spanish proficiency test that you can take. Maybe that'll help you do something.
Right.
I said, okay, so I went and signed up for it. Again, she's from another country. How does she know that there's a test, proficiency test? Somehow she knew that.
But that's the thing. I think that's what's most important, is that you grab onto those little elements.
Yep.
And then you take those little elements, those little hints of things, and then you're like, I think I can do something with that. And then you move forward with it.
The norm would be what? This is my assignment, and that's where I'm going to go.
Right.
That's the norm. That's the box.
Right.
There you go. So I go and take the test. A couple of weeks later, they call me up again and say, hey, you did really well on your test. Where would you like to go?
No way.
And I'm like,
Fiji?
Well, being the genius that I am, I go, Spanish. Spain? I don't know. They looked it up and they said, hey, there's 2 assignments to Spain. Which one would you like to go to? And the only town or city or anything that I knew was Madrid. Not that I knew it, I just the name. And said, well, there's an assignment just outside of Madrid. Do you want to go there? I said, I'd love to go there. Like, what's the catch? They changed my assignment. Instead of going to Kansas, which again, I think would have been, it still would have been a great assignment, I ended up in Madrid, Spain.
That's awesome.
So that taught me that if something isn't going exactly the way you'd like it to go,
right,
what can you do about it?
And then also be open to those ideas, whatever little piece of information that you can kind of pull into what you're going to do, you take it.
Right.
Absolutely.
And the other part, which is part of this, I'm actually writing a book with a friend of mine, and one of the things in the book is through conversation comes discovery, right? This is conversation and discovery. Discussion for me is a different thing. Like if I want to discuss with you something, I already have a preset idea of what I want to talk about, what the end results might be, or what I'd like it to be. And so it's very structured, very structured. I want to discuss with you about your supervisor. You've been coming in late. I want to talk to you about why you're coming in late.
Right.
Instead of having a conversation where, hey, let me talk to you real quick. How's it going? How's your life? What's happening? And in that conversation, you'll probably find out why he's coming in.
Right. Which I think is a beautiful thing, because I never thought about it that way, you know? When we are having a conversation, the sky's the limit, right?
Which is what you're doing here, I think.
Right. There is nothing that binds you. We can go in any direction, which is beautiful, because then all avenues are open, which brings me back to the whole concept of creativity, because you have actually created something beautiful coming from this military background. The concept of what you have done is to actually help veterans. How does creativity, well, first of all, tell us about what you're doing, because it's an amazing thing.
So the name of my business, the property investment business, is what it is. It's not a nonprofit. It's not a program or anything like that. I call it Heroes Haven because it's a place where heroes can go. And we can assist them. So the way that all happened was, one of my first roommates, when I was in Spain, going back to what we were talking about before.
All these connections.
Absolutely. It's all, for me, it's all just, when you write the book out, they go, that's just made up, because there's no way you would have run into that guy. Yeah. And that would have changed the way things happen. There's just no way. But it's exactly what happens, and it keeps happening. I was going through a transition, needed to sell my house, and I moved from the Pentagon to San Antonio. Okay. And working for the government at Lackland Air Force Base when I left the Pentagon. And my first roommate, or actually second roommate in the dorms in Spain, is a good buddy of mine he's got an amazing story, but ultimately now he's just a really great real estate agent. Okay. And so he was helping me he helped me buy my house in San Antonio, then sell my house, and then in search of a replacement home. Okay. Right? And one day we go out and we're just smoking cigars and drinking whiskey and talking, just like that conversation. Right. Nothing specific. We had talked about the houses. We're already done with hey, this is the kind of house I'm looking for, or whatever. Right. And he says to me, hey, let me ask you something. Like, if you could do anything, what would you do? He knew that I work for the government. I'm retired Air Force, and so a lot of that type of structure, if you will. I said, man, if I could figure out a way to house myself, feed myself, and be a blessing to my family if they needed help, and give back to our veteran community, like, that's what I would want to do. Like, that's because in working where I'm working, it's could be very stressful environment. But I found that my relationships with people, to get them through their stressful situations so that we could accomplish the mission, was something that was really close to me. And so in the same aspect, I said, okay, if I could figure out a way to give back to our veteran community, I didn't know exactly how I would want to do it. That's what I want to do. Well, he asked me that question. I think
this is where the creativity comes in, right? Well, how did it happen?
So he comes to me later and says, hey, do you want to buy 4 houses, 2 duplexes? And I'm like, well, that's not
what am I going to do with that?
Well, I'm like, I was thinking maybe I could buy a house and get like a mother-in-law house in the back, and maybe help out a veteran with that mother-in-law house in the back, or I'd live in the mother-in-law house and help out veterans with the rooms in the main house. Right. I wasn't thinking about 4 houses. Yeah. And he goes, you should think about it. Think about what it is that you want to do. Yeah. And then all of a sudden from there, it just shifted me into, I wonder if this is doable. Yeah. This is kind of a hard shot. Nobody really takes this shot. I don't know what I'm doing, right? I don't have a mentor. I don't have anybody to really. So ultimately, I bought the 2 duplexes. So it's 3-bedroom, 2-bath each.
Wow, that's big.
And I work with nonprofits primarily to house homeless veterans. So each one of the rooms, there's 11 rooms in San Antonio, because I take one for myself. So I pretty much gave up everything I had, live out of a room, same thing they're doing, right? They're living
Right.
out of room, and we have a shared kitchen, shared bathroom. And so the proof of concept for that, this was in 2021, because I'm like, I really don't know if, am I just like trying to do something right here, but it's not really helping anybody?
Right.
And is it going to be financially stable enough to?
Correct.
But ultimately, we're blessed, and it's I took what they call deferred retirement from my government job and started doing that full time.
And what exactly is it that you do? By housing, what do you mean? Because the conversations that we've had before, you told me a little bit about how you help these veterans. They're not always veterans who are just coming out shining like a star, right? They have situations that have caused them maybe some hardship.
Right.
How does what you're doing and the way that you've thought of these things help these individuals out of those situations?
Right. So and this is through other conversations that I've had with my guys. I have a great guy that works for me right now. His name's Andre. He came to, I call it Heroes Haven Laurel, because the name of the street is Laurel.
Okay.
That it's on. He came to me. The nonprofits contacted me and said, "Hey, we've got a veteran for you. That's a really spotty background, as a lot of them do, but we think he's very able and willing to go to that next step to help himself, to better himself." I said, well, let's give him a shot. So he came on board and became a huge blessing to me. He lived there. Then he got approved for what they call a VA voucher, which basically gets him his own apartment.
Mm-hmm.
And then, but he's like, but I don't want to stop coming here helping you.
Wow.
So he goes and basically does property management for me and takes care of that property better than I do. And because he's walked that walk, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
He was an officer in the Marines. Once a Marine, always a Marine. But got out, and then some I don't really get into the stories of their things, but he had some real hardships and went through it for years. You know, you can think about everything, sleeping out there. So when he comes to talk to the veterans and volunteers at the different shelters, and then continues on the path of bettering veterans by going through Heroes Haven, a huge blessing for me, because I'm a veteran, but I've never been homeless. Right. And so
there are elements of what you're trying to do and the individuals that you're trying to help, but that you don't even understand.
Right. And you can be there and have a conversation with a vet about what they've gone through, and they'll look at you and go, okay, but you don't really know.
Yeah.
You don't really know. But thank you for trying to help. Well, in the conversations I have with Andre, we've kind of put together this, it's almost like a POW type situation, right? When you're a POW, back in the past, we'd rescue the POWs, if you will, or they got released, and then they do this news thing, right? And hey, we got them back, and then they return them to their family. And it never worked.
Yeah.
Why? Because they went from living the way they were living as POWs straight back into society and their families.
It's definitely a transitional
period. And it's
period.
so difficult.
Yeah, transition.
And so what Heroes Haven provides in one of the options, because there's many options out there, one of the options is, hey, going off the street and then coming and living in almost like community of other veterans, right, who have struggled as well, who are looking to get on their feet, looking to get back. Not everybody is ready for the help. We get that. They get very good at convincing you that they're ready for the help, but they may or may not be, but many of them are. And so now you have a community, they're back in a unit, right? Almost like
family, right?
They're back in a unit, and then as they transition from there, then they possibly go into their own apartment. Because I pay all the utilities and I take care of most of those things, right?
So it's like a slow process.
Right.
And through all of this, what has been the most rewarding thing for you?
The rewarding part, because sometimes I ask myself, I'm just sitting there going, well, why are you doing this? Are you just
exactly?
Are you just like a charming narcissist that just
maybe
that's just like it's all about me? And the answer is that if we never received any type of praise, will we still be doing what we're doing? And the answer is yes, because that one guy that goes from sleeping in the gutter to being a productive member of society and being of value, not just to himself, but to his community, is like what it's all about. Because that guy will pay it forward to somebody else. Like
and I think it's very important for you to allow yourself to do what you can in order to help the individuals that can then pay it forward and help other individuals. So saying that, one of the things that I always ask all of my guests is there any advice that you can give us in general? It doesn't really matter what you want to talk about, but what advice can you give our public that is watching us?
Well, I get a lot of questions like, what can I do? Like, what can I do? I go, well, I don't know really what you can do. There's a lot that can be done. But going to kind of the theme of thinking outside the box is, one, you don't have to have all the answers.
Right. True.
Don't get yourself to a place where it's like, I need to understand this 100% before I make a move, right?
Whatever the situation.
Whatever the situation. But you do need to think enough about what are the left and rights to this situation so that you can, if needed, go outside the box, right? Because if you're just kind of going out and doing whatever it might be and you don't understand the structure enough, whether you agree with it or not, you may be spinning your wheels. You may not be able to accomplish the things you want to get to, but your heart's in the right place, but you're not understanding it. I tell people, even when I was in the Department of Defense, and as a civilian, because as you progress through life, you kind of change your outlook a little bit. And
everybody does.
I had this thing where I just, there was right and wrong. That's it, right and wrong, and I got to be right. Well, I got to a point where I'm like, I don't need to be right. I just need to get it right.
Right.
And for me to get it right, I need to understand, like, the box. So that, and people would come to me from time to time, the different, joint staff when they come to do their inspections, like, well, why did you do it that way? Nobody does it that way. And so they're thinking like that we are just like rogue.
Right.
But really, when you understand the directives and the regulations well enough, you go, well, actually, we're not rogue. It's spelled out here that that's what we can do. Just nobody ever digs that deep into it to find out what can be done. And then the question is, well, why are the requirements that way? Well, because we want to make sure that people are, that the mission is successful. Well, if the principle is this, then maybe the directive needs to be updated because it's outdated.
So if I'm understanding correctly, it's more about allowing yourself to be free enough while using those guidelines to get to the objective.
Right. Understand the left and rights of your situation, and then go outside the box if you need to, because you understand the requirement possibly better than other people. And don't be afraid to fail. Don't be afraid to fail. Don't be afraid. I know you hear this all the time. People are like, don't be afraid to fail. Don't be afraid. How many times did we not get something right, but we were so much better off for it? And then later on, we'd find success. Success can be defined so many different ways. And
I appreciate you taking the time out here because you are a very successful individual in what you're doing, Danny. Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity.
Oh, the pleasure is mine. And I want to thank all of you guys for viewing our show. Again, my name is Miguel Valenzuela, and if you guys need to get a hold of me, maybe you have somebody interesting that I might need to interview, you guys can reach me at mvalen31@epcc.edu. Thank you very much, and we'll see you guys next time.